All right, hello everyone. We have a few people on. I'm gonna start in 3 minutes. So, does this chat work? Can someone actually write something in the chat? If someone, please be so kind. Excellent. Hello, Gabman15. Hello. So you can hear fine quality. How's the quality going? Everything looks okay. Lighting. Good. Excellent. So, I just want to double check. Yeah, this semester, this year, I'm not going to be streaming to YouTube because I'm just really uncomfortable with the idea that people can't really chime in anonymously or kind of anonymous. Like you have to use your real name. See how it looks like, okay. Alright, I see myself. Alright. Yes. Dream Manager. Okay. That's good. Yeah, if you're interested about my setup, how I'm doing this, I'm on a Mac. I'm on an M1, which has both good and bad things. Generally, it's really good. Performance-wise, the chip is as good as advertised and then some. But I'm using OBS. I'm using OBS to stream. I'm not using Streamlabs yet, although I hear that you can put like things like branding and banner and all that fun stuff on there. Yeah, OBS is, I used it last summer and I fell in love with it. I fell in love with it with like scenes and stuff. I think last year I got a little bit carried away with stingers, and I got way too carried away with stingers and, flipping from scene to scene. That kind of gets annoying. That kind of got distracting. But I think, but certainly for today, I'm just going to be using just this screen on a Cali VM, and that's it. I got one more minute. And it really, really feels great to be back. It really feels good to be streaming again. I really missed it for good God, it's been 2 months. It's one of those things that you do it a few times and then you don't look back. You just don't look back. So I'm happy to be back. Happy to be back streaming. Feels good again. One shot just to Twitch this time. Just to Twitch. And after today, after the Today Show, I just have to hit one button and just export all the videos to YouTube. YouTube is good in which, because it has a really, really good closed captioning. But the privacy issues, that's something that is just, that's not good. Alright, so here we are. We are now at, 4:30 Eastern Time. To start, I want to say thank you to everyone for tuning in and welcome. My name is Ming Chow. I'm Associate Teaching Professor at Tufts University, and this is Introduction to Security, offered at Tufts University. And since last fall, I said, you know what? Because we're in a pandemic, we're remote. We'll make the best of the opportunities. And I figured, I think people in general are getting so sick of another Zoom call. So why don't we change things up a little bit and use something that is not Zoom, something that's a little more fun. And I opened my class to use on Twitch on Thursdays. Also, there was another goal, and I'll say it again. One of the reasons why I decided last fall I'm going to open my class up on Twitch to the world is because cybersecurity education is so badly needed right now. And you know, education is a global problem. Accessibility of education is a global problem. So why don't we just make the course and the content accessible to everyone? And I thought there was going to be a one-shot deal. I thought it was going to be, all right, I'll do it one time and one time only. It turned out I absolutely I loved it so much. I loved the streaming. You know, it was sad because by December it was like, it's going to be sad if if I don't do this again. Well, this year and this semester is the 10th anniversary of me teaching security. And I said, you know what? Going to be happy to do an encore performance. And so here we are. We're back. Hopefully bigger than ever. Thank you so much for everyone for tuning in. I can't tell you how blessed I am to have, so many great students over the years, so many current students. Thank you for taking the course, and also for the rest of the world who's tuning in. And today, I am going to be showing using Kali Linux on a virtual machine and command line, the terminal. So really 3 topics: virtual machines, Kali Linux, and the command line. 3 things. But before we begin, I need to make a very important public service announcement. And for those of you who know me in the community, and those who know me in the classroom, on the second day of my class, usually on the second day of the class, and today is considered the second day, I give a public service announcement on harassment. And the PSA is, we do not, and I repeat, we do not tolerate any harassment based on gender, orientation, and race. All right? Harassment of any sort, an absolute no-no. Not only in the classroom, but also virtually on the discussions as well, too. And for those of you who are tuning in, I am reading the chat. I do have a list of all the chat messages that are running. The question is, Ming, are you running Kali on the M1? And the answer is no, I am not. And I am not running Kali Linux on the Apple M1. And here's a fine point. The new Macs, the new Apple, does not support virtual machines. So the idea of installing the traditional VMware VirtualBox on one of the new Apple Silicon Macs, not going to work yet. They're working on it. Even Parallels is not even supporting right now, but it's not even like a full version. It's on trial right now. Yeah, let's leave it at that. So I'm running Kali Linux somewhere on the, I'm running this virtual machine over the internet somewhere. Okay, it still works out well. So let me answer. The first thing I'm going to start is what is a virtual machine? What is a virtual machine? A virtual machine, also we can shorten it, abbreviate it as a VM. So what is a VM? So I've been saying all along that I'm on a Mac right now. So I'm running Linux on top of a Mac. Okay, like what? Yeah, I'm running Linux on top of a Mac. So really what it is, a virtual machine is just an emulation of a full computer on top of your main system that you're using of some sort. That has some values. That has some tremendous values. Why in the world would you ever want to use a virtual machine? The first thing that comes to mind is learning. So if you want to learn, let's say, Windows, or if you want to learn Linux, or in this case, if you want to learn something like Kali Linux, you can actually run a virtual machine on top of the computer that you're running. And any dirty, sinful business, any mistakes that you make within the virtual machine, generally speaking, gets confined into the virtual machine. And it doesn't affect your day-to-day work machine at all. So I'll give you a good example. When you're doing malware analysis, if you want to analyze like malware or really sketchy software, people usually do that within a virtual machine. So any mistakes, anything that gets broken, gets confined within the virtual machine, doesn't usually escape out to whatever your day-to-day machine is, and if things go bad with a virtual machine, you can always delete it. You can always delete it and restart or re-download the virtual machine. And even if you use a snapshot feature, which is available on VirtualBox or VMware, you can revert back to the last good snapshot of the machine that you're working with. That is possible. Okay? But the isolation is a huge thing in security. The idea of isolation, whatever dirty stuff, whatever stuff that you do within a virtual machine gets isolated into the virtual machine only, doesn't affect your host. Your host, of course, is your main computer that you're using. In my case, my host is my Mac, and my guest, or the VM, is Cali Linux, as you see on the screen. Okay. So the question I got is, can run executable? Oh, yeah. Okay. So that is a fantastic question. I'm happy that you asked. So this is Sage King Tut. Thank you so much. Fantastic question. So back in the days, we used to run Windows VMs all the time, and to run executables that, were made for Windows. So if you have a Windows virtual machine, you can run Windows software on there, like the Windows version of Microsoft Office, or the Windows version of Visual Studio. Yes. So absolutely, you can run executables that aren't native. Like if I want to run a Windows program on my Mac, one of the old-fashioned way, one of the ways that we used to do it is run it on a virtual machine, on Windows virtual machine. There is a caveat, though. There is a caveat, and this is why I want to thank you, Sage King Tut, for bringing this up on the message. While yes, you can run executables that aren't native to your host. For example, like a Windows program on a Mac. That can't be done unless with some magic and software like Wine. So you can run executables, Windows executables, on a Windows virtual machine. However, for things like games, Windows, of course, a lot of us, like a lot of you, if you're a gamer, all right, if you're a gamer, okay, you can run Windows games on a Windows VM. But there's a huge caveat, and the huge caveat is performance. The virtual machines generally don't have direct access to like the native hardware. Most stuff, like the network drivers, the networking, is all quote-unquote virtualized. One of the huge drawbacks of using virtual machines is going to be performance. There is going to be a performance hit or penalty if you use virtual machines. While you can run a virtual machine okay, but anything that requires performance at the highest level, games, password cracking, machine learning stuff, you want direct access. You want real native hardware performance. That's not going to be the case with virtual machine. So if you try to run games like FIFA on a Windows virtual machine, it's going to be god slow. It's going to be really, really, really slow. Okay, you may be able to run games like Roller Coaster Tycoon from like the early 2000s, generally okay in a virtual machine, in a Windows virtual machine. But the newer game, which is like extreme performance, like you need strong performance, it's on a virtual machine, it's extremely dicey. Back in the days on a Intel-based Mac, the way to get around that problem is don't use a virtual machine, but use Boot Camp, so you can install Windows natively dual boot. Okay. There's Proton for games if you're going to be using for Linux. Okay, so how do you create and run virtual machines? I don't want to touch too much on this, but I don't want to touch too much upon like creating and running virtual machines, but there's a couple of ways that you can run virtual machines. One way is called install your traditional. It's what is called a hypervisor software on your machine. So if you're on one of the Intel-based Macs, if you're on a Linux or on a Windows system, you can use software like VirtualBox. You can install VirtualBox or VMware. VirtualBox is free and open source. VMware they have a couple of flavors. There is VMware Workstation for Windows and Linux, but for Mac, there's VMware Fusion. So if you're a student, if you're a full-time student, you can get a 1-year free license of VMware Fusion or Workstation, depending on what platform you use, what your computer is. You can get a free license for 1 year. Retail price, I forget, is usually around like $50 to $70 for a copy of VMware. Okay. You can also use QEMU. There's also a bunch of other options like QEMU. It is tricky to set up. Thank you, yep, for Gabman. So that's like the traditional way of creating and running virtual machines, is to install, a hypervisor like QEMU, VirtualBox, VMware. If you're on a Mac, you can also use Parallels. The price is range from either $0 to, usually less than $100 for the software. But there is one huge drawback, that if you're going to be running and creating virtual machines on your own computer, that it's going to eat up a lot of hard disk space. So you better make sure that you have lots of gigabytes left. So Cali Linux, for example, you need a good 10 gigabytes. You want to run a Windows virtual machine on top of let's say a Mac, you need at least a good 20 gigs. 25 for Windows 10. So what mic am I using? I am using a Logitech. It's built into the webcam. So the caveat, also a huge caveat, is virtual machine hypervisors. You can't install it on a Chromebook. I have a Chromebook. I still have one. If we go back in person, I'll be using that as my quote unquote my work laptop. You cannot install virtual machines on a Chromebook. And as I said earlier, if you're on a Windows, the newest Macs, at the moment you cannot install like VirtualBox or VMware. Parallels is right now in like trial mode. So okay, what about the people who cannot install a hypervisor or VMs on their computer? What's the other option? The other option is to spin up virtual machines in the cloud. You can use like Google Cloud, it's called Compute Engine, or if you're using AWS, Amazon Web Services, EC2. So you can also spin up virtual machines in the cloud as well too. And that's basically what I am doing today. That's what I am running on right now. So my Cali virtual machine is somewhere on the internet. All I just need to do is just connect to it of some sort. So if we're taking this class with an 8 gig MacBook, would you not recommend you installing Cali? On a MacBook, that's a good question. So if we're taking this class with an 8 gig MacBook, would you not recommending it? 8 gigs is, 8 gigs is good enough for memory. It's good enough only. But if you're on a Mac, you can install a lot of the tools natively. I mean, if I had an 8 gig MacBook right now, I wouldn't use a VM. I would just install all the tools natively, if you're comfortable doing so. What's a good EC2 option tier? Will there be enough storage and computing power? Generally speaking, there should be. I think you should need, like, I'm thinking off the top of my head, anywhere between 10 to 15 gigs of hard disk space and 2 gigs of RAM at the most. I have Cali dual boot. Yep, seems to work fine. I mean, you can do that on an old MacBook Pro, but the new stuff, on the new Macs, like, good luck trying to do dual booting with anything. But yeah, if you have like 8 gigs on an old Mac or something, and I always struggle with this, I install the stuff directly on the Mac. You don't need to use a Cali VM. But you don't need to use a Cali VM because most of the tools that are installed, like Wireshark, I use day to day anyway, so I use them all the time. So I mean, from, using a Cali VM on my case can feel like overkill, but for learners it's really, really nice because it gives you everything and everything possible. It gives you everything and everything. So I'm going to get to that right now. Let's get into Kali Linux and what in the world is Kali Linux? Why in the world is the people in cybersecurity in the field talk about Kali Linux so much? You have an 8 gig memory, should I install everything direct? Yeah. Yeah, just like for example, Wireshark, just download the package on wireshark.org. It's only like 100 or so megabytes. It's so, Wireshark and Nmap are some of those tools that are so valuable to have anyway. Oh, and if you're on a Mac, if you're on an old Mac, you can use something like Homebrew to install tools on the command line, such as Nmap. Yeah, yes, I remember the good old, that was over 10 years ago, felt like yesterday. So I'm going to log into Kali Linux, a virtual machine that I am running somewhere on the internet. I'm going to log in now. Bam. So I've logged in. So again, if you don't believe me, so I'm running a Mac. That my main system is a Mac, but the virtual machine I'm running is somewhere on the internet. Somewhere on the internet. So I'm running a Linux, Kali Linux, on top of my Mac. Yeah, the click-clack is because I have a mechanical keyboard. Let me just say the reason why I use a mechanical keyboard, because I broke 2 plastic keyboards in a span of 1 year. I'll just leave it at that. So here I am, I've logged into Kali Linux. So what in the world is this Kali Linux things? Like, what in the world is this Kali Linux thing that everyone talks about in the cybersecurity field? Kali Linux is a distribution, a Linux distribution that was designed for security practitioners. I repeat, Kali Linux is a Linux distribution that was designed for security practitioners, with all the tools installed, almost all the important tools installed for you, so you don't have to install anything else. So, here we are. I have logged into Kali Linux on a virtual machine. I got my pointer here. And to illustrate what is given to you in Kali Linux, the default installation, you go to the upper right corner, go to Applications, click on it, you click on the little dragon, and take a look at what is given to you. Kali Linux, by default, will give you lots and lots and lots of tools for information gathering, for vulnerability analysis, for web application analysis. We'll be using Burp Suite certainly a little later on this course. Database assessment. For password attacks, that also include cracking passwords. Yes, we'll be using John the Ripper, and I'm sure a lot of you would really like to use Hashcat. If you're interested in wireless security or auditing wireless, also wireless tools are available by default on Kali Linux. Reverse engineering tools. APK tool is, we'll be using that to analyze malware, namely Android malware. Also exploitation tools, sniffing and spoofing. Next week, we'll start to cover Wireshark. We'll use Wireshark next week. Arguably one of the most important tools in cybersecurity. There's also post-exploitation tools to maintain access. There's even tools on forensics. There's tools on reporting. And also even tools for social engineering. Like if you write or want to craft up a phishing email to your company and do a phishing test, use Dave Kennedy's social engineering toolkit. Of course, you'll also have a web browser in Kali Linux, and it is Firefox, the last time I've checked. So if you load up the web browser on Kali Linux, you will actually see a welcome. And again, Kali Linux was designed for security practitioners. The main website of Kali Linux is at cali.org. And you notice that my virtual machine is connected to the internet, so I can also browse the web on a virtual machine. Can you all see? Can you all see? So https://www.cali.org is the website on Kali Linux, where it has news, updates. The latest release was back in November. The latest release of Kali Linux was back in November of 2020. This is good to know because why I'm bringing this up to you is Kali Linux is updated every so often on a given year, usually 4 times, one for each quarter. The next one is scheduled for February, I think this month. I think the next release of Kali Linux is going to be like 2021.1 should be soon. Maybe this month. Maybe this month. So what the Kali site has, they have the documentation. But, you know, if you're a learner, one of the first places to go is to go to the download section. And this is where you can download Kali images on a DVD image or even a virtual machine. And so here are your options. It's at www.cali.org/downloads. And so you have Kali Linux 64 with the installer. You have a live version of it. If you're going to be, so you may be wondering, oh, like which one should I download? If you want to download everything, if you want to install and download everything onto a virtual machine on your own, or you want to create like a dual boot of Kali Linux, go for the installer. If you want to try out Kali Linux, you know, one thing that you can use as a, you want to, you know, have a live version of Kali Linux, let's say on a USB stick, and what you can carry around with you, the live version is good. If you know what you're doing and you don't want like a big bloat, like a 3 gig download, and you just want like a net installer version, like a mini version, so you can just have your option, you pick and play what you want, you can download a 471 megabit version, a megabit version of a net installer. This is all the DVD images. But if you have either VMware or VirtualBox, you can download the respective VM. These days, you want to be using the 64-bit version. So it's either going to be the 64-bit version of VMware or the 64-bit version of VirtualBox. Available on the Offensive VM download page. Offensive VM is the maker, the creator of Kali Linux, formerly known as Backtrack. So here's the page. You will have Kali Linux images. For VirtualBox will be presented by default. If you had to ask me for my opinion, what should you want to use for a hypervisor to run virtual machines, whether it's VMware or VirtualBox? I've used VMware for over 20 years, and while it's a commercial software, if I had to pick one, I pick VMware over VirtualBox. Because for the life of me, I can't tell you how many times I've struggled with things like moving files from my host system to the VM, like drag and drop on using VirtualBox. Like VirtualBox, a lot of the, in terms of the usability, is much less, it works. I mean, VirtualBox does the job. Like, things work, but it doesn't feel as polished as VMware. When we do professional trainings, let's say, for example, at a DEF CON security conference, and we had to install software on a workstation, we use VirtualBox because we don't have any money. So, if budget is an issue, VirtualBox will be mighty fine. It's really good to just do the job. If you go to a lot of professional trainings, like if you go to SANS Institute or if you go to Black Hat, a lot of the trainings will ask you will say they want you to use VMware. So just a heads up. Like, both works, but when push comes to shove, which option is, I think, better? For like the commercial version, in this case VMware, is, I feel it takes the edge in terms of performance and usability. If you're using Vagrant, the spin up virtual machines, it uses VirtualBox by default. Okay, so why do you want to use Cali Linux? Like, the reason why is I'll say, well, for a couple of reasons. One, already got everything installed for you. I mean, it has everything and then some for you. Okay? So you don't have to install everything on your own. Like, if you want to, let's say, one day want to test out Maltego, for example, you don't need to install Java, which Maltego depends on. And it's already installed, everything is already installed for you. That is a huge case. That is a huge case of using Cali of using a virtual machine, because it got everything installed for you. You don't need to install anything at all other than just running the virtual machine. Is this being recorded? Of course it's being recorded. And I will let everyone know when the Twitch session will be, what the link of the Twitch session will be. And I'll also put in the link for the YouTube on YouTube as well, too. So it's both. One note, since you mentioned that, is interesting because I don't have Twitch Prime. The live sessions, these live sessions on Twitch, will only last for 14 days. After 14 days, it's gone. So, yeah, it's gone. So that's why I back it up to YouTube. And YouTube, YouTube gets interesting because I know they have been shutting down a lot of security practitioners' YouTube videos. So that's an interesting matter, but I'm not worried about that at all yet. But yeah, this will also be available on YouTube as well. Also, since you brought this up, and this is also important, I strongly encourage you to download any videos, to download the videos and store them, like, on your own computer. I certainly don't mind, just in case of one day I get banned, or something, or my account gets shut down. Which, again, had happened to a lot of people that does cybersecurity videos on YouTube. Yeah, that's the topic I want to get into. So, Cali Linux, as you can see, has everything installed for you. It's really nice. I'm not going to upload the, you know what, it's such a pain to upload them on Canvas. Because, you have to enable third-party cookies, then I have to download a video, and then which are like 3 gigs, and then I upload them. So, but they're going to be on both YouTube and on Twitch. YouTube should be permanent. Like, should be. Should be. And they're going to be made public, too. All the videos are public. All the videos are public. So, one of the biggest problems is this with Cali Linux, and especially for new learners. If you're looking at Cali right now, it's just so much stuff. It's like, oh my God. Like, here I am, I'm trying to learn cybersecurity. Where do I start? Like, where do I start? That is the big issue. Like, The big question I get all the time, whether it's on personal email or on social media, on Twitter, is where do I start? Look, okay, I'll say a couple of things. Yes, 3 things, and I want to have a friendly reminder to everyone. Cybersecurity is a very broad field, and there's a lot, like a lot. Imposter syndrome is a really big problem. It's a real issue. Let's get that out of the way. Imposter syndrome is really real. You will feel stupid at times. Like, I mean, everyone, it's okay. It's just so much now. It can be very overwhelming. But number 2, you know, cybersecurity, especially, to learn cybersecurity, you gotta build your hands-on skills. Like, cybersecurity is such a hands-on field that you gotta have the hands-on abilities. You gotta have hands-on ability. The best way to learn, you can read all the books in the world that you want about cybersecurity, but it's not gonna do you any good unless you practice and you do it by hand. Okay? So, you may be wondering, why am I showing you Cali Linux and the command line today? Well, that piece. I didn't say that I didn't say that earlier, and this is very important. Cybersecurity is very hands-on. It's extremely hands-on. You learn by doing. You learn by doing. You learn by doing. Okay? And how I got into the field, you know, I did not. I mean, I graduated from Tufts in 2002, and there was no security course. What's sad is there are a lot of institutions still, here in the year 2021, that still don't have a security course. If you can believe that. I'm not going to name any schools. Okay? There's still schools that don't even teach security at all in a computer science curriculum. And hence why we're fighting the same battles year after year. We're putting out we're extinguishing fires, and it just feels like nothing has ever been fixed. Everything is completely broken. There's a serious education problem, which ultimately is the reason why I make these videos on Twitch. About having students back, absolutely. And there is going to be a day about that, especially if you ever find vulnerabilities on systems. That I will always have your back. Okay? And this is a good point. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. This is a good course. This is good. I like these 2 questions. How do you recommend practicing on the Tufts network? Is there potential legal issue that yeah. Oh boy. Oh boy. So I'm happy that you asked that question. How do you recommend practicing on the Tufts network? The answer is you don't want to hit the Tufts network. You want to get permission first. But generally speaking, anything that you do on the Tufts network, and namely, if you're trying to hit the Tufts net, if you're hitting a real network, you're going to get caught. And in that case, you get grumpy people going after you, and then I had to bail you out of jail. Quote unquote. Yeah. So, don't want to practice on a real network like Tufts. You don't want to do that. So this is another reason why you want to be using virtual machines, whether it's on your computer or in the cloud. Okay? So yeah, the point being is practice only on systems and networks where that you have permission. Practice only on systems and networks that you have permission to practice on. I recommend Metasploitable as a good place to start, which is a deliberately vulnerable virtual machine as it is. Ming has an idea to guess who I am. I'm not a current. Are you who I think you are? You're one of the system administrators? Okay? But that's another thing. Even if you... So, an interesting thing about what sudo is. I'll get to that in a few minutes. But, it's okay. I mean, the one nice thing about at a university environment and a place like Tufts Computer Science is you can do a lot of dirty, you can do stuff, you can make mistakes, but you can get away with it. And if you're running sudo on, let's say, on the Tufts Computer Science Halligan servers, yeah, you get grumpy people, but we also know you're trying to learn as well, too. Okay, so that leads up to, okay, what do I do now? Like, okay, so there's so much stuff here. I don't know where to start. Okay, there's so many tools. And, okay, but you're saying hands-on abilities are important. So there's a whole bunch of things going on right now. There's so much in Kali Linux, but hands-on skills are important. What do I do? So, and this is where the first thing that you gotta do, if you're learning cybersecurity, I always tell people this, and because we're having a conversation right now on Twitch about things like sudo and commands and all that, the first thing that I always tell cybersecurity students and new learners is to get comfortable using the command line terminal. I repeat, get comfortable using the command line terminal. In Kali Linux, to access the terminal, all you need to do, what you do is click on, go to the upper left corner, and to the right of the dragon, you can see a little terminal icon, and you can see mouse over it, say terminal emulator. Click on that. And here we are. Can you all see? I hope the font is big enough. I hope the background is clear enough. Does this work? Okay. The first things first, I always tell students, is to get comfortable using the command line. Why? Why is the command line the first thing that you really got to get comfortable using? The reasons is this. Number one, okay, most security tools are built on top, but built using a whole bunch of command line security tools. A bunch of command line tools. Yes, lots of cybersecurity tools are built on top of command line tools that we've known for years. That's number one. Lots of security tools are command line based only. That's number two. Why is that? Why are so many cybersecurity tools hands-on, command line based, and not like with a fancy graphical interface and all that? It's because once you add a fancy graphical interface, it requires a lot more software, a lot more bloat, which ultimately will also translate into a lot more security problems. Okay? Here's another reason why you got to get comfortable with the command line. Say for the sake of argument that you break into a computer, that you break into a machine, like you actually get access to a remote computer. In this cybersecurity course, you actually you will have the opportunity to break into computers legally, under my jurisdiction, under my permission. So when you actually gain access to another computer, you generally speaking won't have access to nice graphical user interfaces and stuff. You won't. You'll have only a command line as well. You'll only have a command line. No graphical tool, no nothing. Only a command line terminal. So if you gain access, let's say you break into a server that I set up to you, you'll only have a command line. No graphical, no clicky stuff. Okay? And also, and I will quote a friend that he said, you know, we're typists. Generally, we're typists. So it's a lot faster to work by way of typing stuff away. So here we are in Kali Linux, in the terminal emulator. And this is where you can learn and practice a whole bunch of Linux commands. Okay? So one of the first things that I always tell people, the first command that you should always learn is ls. ls is to list all the files in your current working directory. So as you can see right now, If I do an ls, you can see a bunch of files, folders more specifically. Alarm, algo, desktop, malware, pcaps, Yara underscore rules. Okay? ls is to do directory listing. But let's say that you're not familiar with commands like ls, or the one that we've been going through in the Twitch chat, in the Twitch session, is sudo. There's a command called man, M-A-N. Man stands for the manual. Man, ls. If you type man space ls, you will see the manual for the command. In this case, the ls command lists directory contents. Lists information about the file, the current directory by default. Sort entries alphabetically, and yada yada yada. You can also hit the return key to see all the different flags that are available, the options that are available for the ls command. As you can see in the instruction, it says press H for help or for Q for quit. Q. Okay? So a virtual machine, okay, so the difference between a virtual machine, a VM, and Kali Linux, one more. Kali Linux is a distribution. It's a type of, it's a full operating system. You can install Kali Linux as either on your own computer or run it as a virtual machine. A virtual machine is just a computer running on top of your computer. It's an emulation. Does that answer your question? Does that answer? What's the difference between a VM and Kali Linux? So Kali Linux is a full operating system, full Linux distribution that is tailored to security practitioners. Has all these tools installed for you. A virtual machine, a VM, is just an emulation of a computer, like a computer running on top of a computer. Going back. Man. Yeah, so a VM is what you use to run. Yep. So man. Man is an interface to the system reference manual. So also known as a manual. Quit. I want to do an ls again. And I want to go into a folder called malware. Now I can see that these are folders if I do ls-l. What ls-l is going to do is going to show you all the files in your current, by default, it's going to show you all the files in your current working directory, the file permissions, the owner, and the group that has access to the folder. So on the very left, you see a whole bunch of tuples, usually in the RWX, like the RX. So what does this mean? The first letter shows you if the file is a directory, if it starts with a D. If it doesn't start with a D, then, and it's a blank, like a dash, it's just going to be a regular file. If it has an L, it means a symbolic link, also known as a shortcut or an alias. The next three items, okay, the next three, followed by the next three, followed by the next three, these things are called the file permissions. The first three tuples are the permissions that the owner of the file have access to. R stands for read, W stands for write, X stands for execute. Wait a minute, who's the owner of the file? The first column here. In this case is a defcon. So my username is defcon. So this column right here, the first column that you see with the username, that's the username. That's the owner of the file. So I'm the owner of the file, and I have read, write, execute permission to the alarm folder, because the alarm is a folder because it starts with the letter D. The next thing you see is R-X, read executable. This is the permission that the group has access to. A group is the next thing here. In this case, there's only one group called defcon, but a lot of you folks is, let's say you all have a username, but you could be in a group called faculty. You could be in a group called student. There could be another group out there called faculty. And the biggest difference is faculty can see grades, can see and modify grade files while students can't. So that's the importance of group permissions. Okay, that's the importance of having group permissions. So like for most of you, you will probably be in a student, like say for sake of argument, on the Tufts Computer Science servers, you'll be all as part of the student group. If you do an ls minus LA on the files on your computer, you should be able, I think you should see student as the group that you belong to in most files. For me, I see faculty. That means I can go and see modified grading, the grading system. That's why permissioning is important. The last but not least, the last three tuples, rs-x. This is for the permissions of everyone in the world. So everyone in the world that have access to the system can have read and executable permissions to the alarm folder. Okay? So if I want to get into the malware folder, it's cd, change directory, malware. I've done that. So now, as you can see, I'm in the malware folder. If I do an ls, here are all the files and folders in the malware folder, and it's just a collection of malware. What's the D again? Directory. If you see a D, hold on. So now I'm in my malware. I'm in a folder called malware. If I do an ls minus L on it, I see a mixture of, I see files with D, some don't. So this one called apt34.tgz is not a directory, it's a file. So if you're confused if you need to use Cali, the answer is no. And this is something I made very clear of. What I am using Cali for here for teaching purposes today, because it has all the tools in the world that you need. Oh, and I also can use the command line to actually do a demonstration. Okay? So, man CD. The manual. Oh God, there's no manual for CD. Oh, that's weird. That sucks. Okay. What about the command called clear? Clear the screen. And clear. Clear the terminal screen. Cool. Now, one of the first things I always tell people to do, the first things first, when you actually run Kali Linux on a virtual machine for the first time, let's say if you're running Kali Linux on VirtualBox or on VMware, is to use this command called ping, P-I-N-G. Ping. What ping does is a very good diagnostic tool to check if you have internet connection. So if I do man ping, send ICMP echo request to network. What does that mean? We'll talk about what ICMP means starting next week when we get into networks. Okay? But what ping means, what ping does, is to check if a host, if a remote computer is up or not. Ping google.com. So what I'm going to do is to check if I can actually reach out and touch google.com. And as I can see, oh, interesting, good. I should see all these items. I should see a list of 64 bytes from, yada, yada, yada. And this is a good sign. If I see this, 14 packets transmitted. What are packets? We'll cover packets next week. 14 packets transmitted, 14 received, 0 packet loss, 13,016 milliseconds, which is really good. Okay, so I can ping out to google.com. What does that mean in plain English is I have internet access. I have access to the internet, the world's largest network. Now, if you try to ping a computer that doesn't, you can either ping by way of domain name or IP address. And in this case, I'm going to do a ping. I'm going to see if this computer at 192.168.1.220 is available. And if it isn't available, you'll get a blank. So what this tells me is this. I'm going to hit Control-C to end. Destination host is not reachable. So the computer at 192.168.249 is not available. or at 220. It's not, that's weird, I don't know why it's doing that. At any rate, it's not available. There's no machine with the IP address 192.168.1.220. I'm going to clear the screen again. I'm going to type ping facebook.com. Facebook is available. You can also see Facebook's IP address as well too, which is nice in this case. Ping reddit.com. All up. You can see Reddit's IP. Ping tufts.edu. Let's say it's tufts.cs.tufts.edu. You do a ping at ping.cs.tufts.edu. You can see that you'll get in return the IP address of cs.tufts.edu. But what this really proved to you is, okay, yeah, you can touch the internet. You got networking. You can also see if a computer is up or down. But that's what it gives you. Okay, so an analogy of how the ping protocol, how ping works is, think of how sonars and submarines work. So submarines will send a ping, and then you get a sound wave, and it hits something, let's say another submarine, you'll get a response of a pong back. But if it doesn't hit anything, the ping will just go on forever, and it gets lost eventually. So what man ping, if you do man ping again, sends an ICMP echo request to network host. Really, the technical details are echo, echo and reply, ping or pong. So ping is a really, really important diagnostic tool. So I'm going to get out for a second. Of Cali, and I'll come back to this. I'll go to my terminal. I'm going to go to my new basic terminal. Can you all see? So here I am on my Mac. Can you use ping as well on a Mac? And the answer is absolutely you can. So ping google.com. So again, this also shows you, you don't need Cali Linux to take this course. Although it's nice that it has everything for you. But also the skills that you learn are transferable from system to system. So commands like ping, cd, ls, you know, you can use them on Mac OS. You can now even use it on Windows on their Linux subsystem. Same thing, it works. So if you don't want, you can also use the command line in what's called the terminal app. I'm just using a terminal app on Mac OS. Use commands like ping and ping. Generally speaking, is that the manual will look the same. Roughly speaking, there will be some minor differences, some mostly minor differences, but clear the screen. Clear still works. ls. So if I do an ls right now, I see all the files on my current documents folder. ls-l, I see file permissions. In this case, it's interesting, you see the owner is actually my real name. It's like, you know, the owner of each and every file here is mchow. And macOS actually has a group called staff. Alright, so if you don't want to use a VM and you already have a Mac or you have a Windows system, even on Chromebook, if you're on Chromebook, you have something called a Linux, Chromebook Linux. You can install the command line, the Linux system for Chromebooks, and you get a command line prompt. And you can practice on there as well. Okay, so I'm going to quit out of this. I don't need this anymore. But I want to go back to the VM, the Cali VM. Here we are. I'm going to clear the screen again. And the second thing I tell people to do is update all the system software. So how do you do that? So how you update the system software on a Linux system is usually you have to do a two-step process. The first thing you have to do is called Sudo Apt update. Oh, before I hit the return button, what is this thing called sudo? I remember this was in the chat a whole bunch of times. Man sudo. Sudo is execute a command as another user, namely as root. On Linux and Unix system, root is also known as a super user, the administrator, which can do anything in the world. Sudo allows a permitted user to execute commands as the super user or another user as specified by the security policy. Think of sudo as giving you temporary admin administrative privileges. Okay? Yep, sudo gives you root privileges. Root can give you, you can do anything with root. Sudo apt update. That's step number one. What is apt? Man apt. apt is a high-level command line interface for the package management system. Package management system is like, think of all the software updates. Clear the screen. Sudo apt update. What sudo apt update will do is it will go and download download a list of all the latest software in their version. Just an index. And because I am using sudo, I have to enter in my password. And once I actually enter in my password correctly, I will temporarily have root access privilege so I can run the apt command to go and download an index, a list of all the latest software. Just a list. Okay. It says all packages are up to date. So now, if you want to go and upgrade everything, sudo apt upgrade. Sudo apt upgrade, what it will do is it's going to upgrade all the software that's on your system, if necessary. If I do this, I'm going to say, reading package list done, building dependency tree, reading cache state information done, calculating upgrade done. Nothing needs to be upgraded, nothing needs to be installed, nothing needs to be moved, nothing needs to be upgraded. So I'm all clear. But that is not going to be the case if you're going to boot up Cali Linux from a VM the first time. You're probably going to see a ton and tons of software that need to be upgrading. So then you just hit the yes key to go update. Sudo elevate, thank you so much. The difference between sudo and sudo apt. Sudo elevates permission, apt is a program. Yep. apt is a program. Okay? But you need both of them. You can't do, if I do this, so I'll just do this. So what happens if I do apt update? Boom. Permission denied, permission denied, permission denied. So the jacks, so you notice right now I do apt update. I can't do it anymore. I can't because you can see the problems. Okay? Permission denied. But if I do sudo apt update, and this time I don't need to enter in my password because I already did like 5 minutes ago, that it works. Update is to, okay, what's the difference between update and upgrade? This is where the manual becomes important. Man up apt. Are you ready? Let's scroll down. Update. Update is used to download package information from all configured sources. Other commands operate on this data to, e.g., perform package upgrade or search in and display details about all packages available for installation. So that is the update option for the apt tool. But what is upgrade? Upgrade, here it is, upgrade is used to install available upgrades of all packages currently installed on the system from the sources configured via sources list. Apt, by the way, is only available for Debian-based Linux distributions, like Cali Linux, or Ubuntu, or Debian. Those are, or you can use apt on those. If you're using a Linux system like Red Hat, they use something else. Or Arch Linux, they use something else. New packages will be installed if required to satisfy dependencies, but existing packages will never be removed. If an upgrade for a package requires a removal of an installed package, the upgrade for this package isn't performed. Okay, so that's the difference between upgrade and update for apt. You can also use apt-get, which is a former name of APT. Does Homebrew? Yeah, okay. So that's a good question. Does Homebrew replace APT on Mac? The answer is yes. Okay, that's a great question. I want to, hold on, let me get out of my VM. All right. All right, so what is Homebrew? Homebrew, you have to install on your own for your Mac, but it serves as a very similar package, for similar reason, Homebrew works very much the same, it's the same idea as APT for Linux. Homebrew is only available for Macs. It was only available for Mac, but apparently now it's available for Linux as well too. So the answer to your question, Jax1010, is does Homebrew replace APT on Macs? The answer is generally speaking yes. But Homebrew you have to install on your own. I got it. That's what I depend on my Mac. So I'm just going to go to Basics. And instead of APT on a Mac, it's Brew Update. Okay. So let's say I want to install, what's a good tool? What's a good command line tool? wget. Clear the screen. Brew info wget. So wget is a tool to actually, it's a command line tool to go download files. So you can do brew install wget. Yep. Brew install wget. Oh, I already have it installed on my computer. Brew install wget. Wget 2.1 is already installed and up to date. To reinstall, yada. That's a Homebrew version. I'm going to quit out of this. But what about on Cali Linux or on a Linux distribution? Clear the screen. Sudo Apt install wget. I already got it installed. Okay. So you can see the parallel between APT and Homebrew. Okay, the same idea is the same. Installing and updating and even uninstalling software. Okay. So if you on Mac, Homebrew is pretty much so well used now by a lot of developers. Okay. So if you want to install a tool, let's say curl. Sudo apt install curl. Again, I already got it. Okay, so wait a minute. What is a wget tool? Clear the screen, man, wget. Wget is a non-interactive network downloader. Okay, so what it does is just, well, it's a command line version. It's a command line tool to download files. That's what it is. Wget is a tool. It's a command line tool to download files. It supports HTTP, HTTPS, and FTP protocols as well for retrieving through HTTP proxies. So here I am. I'm going to go and cd and tilde. So what the tilde means is tilde goes back to your home directory. You're working your home directory. So now if I do an ls, I'm back home, which has my alarm, my folders alarm, algo, desktop, malware, pcaps, Yararule. So the tilde means your home directory. Now if you do a cd slash is your root directory. So does APT not work on Mac? No. APT is not Mac. It's only Linux based. Homebrew is for Macs only. And now Linux. If you're using a Mac, use Homebrew. If you're using Linux, use APT. Caveat, Debian, Cali, and Ubuntu only. If you're using Windows, Windows has a whole bunch of different options. I forgot off the top of my head. Yeah, I've not seen APT exist on Macs. Homebrew. So the root directory is always a slash. This is the top level directory of your system. Now if you're doing ls now, the top level directory root is has the following folders: bin, boot, dev, etc. Generally speaking, you won't need to touch a lot of stuff here, but the two folders that become important at the root level, at the system level, are two folders. cd/etc. What is the etc folder is, the etc folder has a lot of configuration files for different tools. I'll do this again. cd etc, do an ls. So the etc/etc folder is at the root level. It's called etc, but it usually contains a lot of configuration files for different tools like Postgres database, Python, Wireshark, and you name it. The list goes on. There's even there should be yep, there is a wget configuration file here. If you go to, there's another file at the root directory that becomes important. I'm going to go back to the root. cd/ is the var, not the var, var folder. cd/var. If you're doing ls, this is where you can see backup cache files, your web directory, www, if you have a web server installed, but also in the log folder, cd/log. This is where all the system logs are stored. Any system logs are stored in /var/log. On Mac OS, this is where all the system logs are stored as well, /var/log. Okay? Okay, the password, the command to set your own password once you're in the terminal is passwd. Yeah, man, passwd. Passwd on Linux, change your password. There you go. Yep. One thing I want to go back now, I want to go to go back to my working home directory, cd tilde, clear ls. I want to go download a file that I need for next week. So I'm going to do wget http /www.cs.tufts.edu /comp/116/sample.pcap. Ooh, that's not good. So what wget is trying to download this file called sample.pcap at www.cs.tufts.edu /comp/116. You see a problem. File not found, 404. The reason is because, yep, passwd is terminal. Because I had a misspelling. It's not sample, it's simple.pcap. Watch what happens. If I do wget http.url, hit enter, boom. I got downloaded a file called simple.pcap. I'm going to clear the screen. And I'm going to do an ls now. If I do an ls, you notice there is now a brand new file called simple.pcap that's in my home directory. So I successfully downloaded a file called simple.pcap from the /comp/116 directory in www.cs.tufts.edu. What in the world is simple.pcap? What is that? Well, one thing is, one of my favorite commands to use is something called file. File simple.pcap. What it does, what file space simple.pcap will do, is going to tell you what type of file it is. Simple.pcap, pcap capture file, version 2.4, Ethernet capture, yada yada yada. So what this is, the simple.pcap file is something called a pcap capture file, which will be the gist, the basis of next week's Twitch session on analyzing network traffic. Okay, so that's a file command, man file. Determine file type. So I want to go into malware. Go into my malware folder, and if I do clear the screen so you can do file, Nightmare Market DDoS, case sensitive, And you can see that this Python, this file, nightmaremarketddos.py, is a Python script, ASCII text executable with very long lines. Okay? If I do file apt34.tgz, it's going to say it is a TGZ gzip compressed data file from Unix. Okay? Do I have a PDF file of it? Ah, yes, I do. CD apt. Now, if you don't want to type in the full directory name in this case, I want to get into this apt_cybercriminal_campaign_collection. You can do CD space apt asterisk for wildcard. It will go into your apt_cybercriminal_campaign_collection folder. Oops, ls file readme.md. This markdown, this .md file is Unicode text. I'm going to go to CD 2021. So I can go pretty deep. CD, oh, we got something from 2021.02.01. I want to go to this Operation Night Scout folder. And here is a PDF file, so I can do a file. I'm going to clear the screen. ls file star.pdf. So it's just going to do, okay, tell me what kind of file this Operation Night Scout supplied. There's a long file name, online gaming Asia.pdf file is. And you can see it's a PDF document. Okay? So I want to go back to my home directory, and I want to leave it at one thing. So if I do, if I want to take a look at what is inside the simple.pcap file, I can do a couple of options. One is called cat. What's cat? Concatenate files and print out to standard output. Clear the screen, cat, sample.pcap, and what you're going to see is ugly. If I do a cat sample.pcap, oh damn, simple.pcap, my type. Cat simple.pcap. It's a lot of garbage characters. This is what is called, like you see a lot of funny symbol, funny symbol, funny symbol, funny symbol. What would me worry? All these funny symbols. If you see funny symbols like these, it generally means that, okay, the file is binary. This is all binary data. Okay? You can also take a look at the contents of a folder using more. More. More is file perusal filter for CRT viewing. CRT means, I think CRT is cathode ray tube, which is like the command. So I'm going to clear more sample.pcap. More simple.pcap. Same idea. But if it's a really long file, I'll give you a good example. CD algo. Algo is a VPN software. So if I do more, config.cfg, let's do cat. Config.cfg. I want to see what this config.cfg file is. So if I do a cat, boom. It just showed you everything. But if you do more, config.cfg, you notice you're going to start at the top of the file, then you hit the enter key and you can just go through the entire file. Hit enter, hit enter, hit enter. Boom, 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 boom. There you go. Oh, there you go. I went too far. More config. To quit out of a more, you just hit Q. ls. So if you want to remove a file, yeah, you want to do rm. Okay? So I don't want to remove any files yet. Well, actually, hold on. I want to go back to my my current directory. I want to clear the screen. Another important command that is important that I really like, if you want to see the all the readable, human readable strings or text of a file, is strings. Strings simple.pcap. These are all the human readable strings, non-binary, in this file called simple.pcap. And strings. Strings is so well used for like analysis, especially when you're trying to do malware or any analysis of like binary programs, including malware, application, software, print sequence of printable characters in a file. So I do strings, simple.pcap again, and you can see what me worry. I mean, if I did cat, simple.pcap, remember what happened last time, it just all garbage. Okay, strings, if you have like a binary program, like a game or Microsoft Word, you can see all the human readable string. It's really nice. What else? Yeah, I'm going to do an ls again. I'm going to clear the screen. I'll do an ls. But I want to remove a file. rm simple.pcap. Removes it. Gone. Yep. So, with that being said, now we're out of time. We're over by 3 minutes. So what we're going to do next week is, today we did terminal. The first lab in the security class is get comfortable with the command line, and also you play capture the flag right away. You play a CTF game. Lots and lots of fun. But I hope this segues also into next week, where next week we're going to be looking at this. What is this PCAP file? And how do you analyze computer network traffic? And that's where we're going to use a tool called Wireshark. Next week, we'll be on using Wireshark, which is on sniffing and spoofing, Wireshark. And we're going to use Wireshark next week to analyze computer network traffic. Yeah, that's a good question. Okay, so first of all, is the Wednesday session just for grad students? The answer is yes. The Wednesday session is just for the online master's program. Yes, we have an online master's program now, which I'm very happy about. Wednesday session is only just for the online master's student, grad student. I like this question. This one is a very important one. Why call them labs, not homework? There was a very conscious reason why. I want to address this before I close. Very, very important. Why do I call them labs and not homework? Look, I just hate the word homework, because homework has a connotation with academics. And I don't like to call them homework because, you know, it's just such an academic-y name. Labs has a connotation of hands-on. And all my labs, all the work that's done in this security course is all hands-on. And that's why we call them labs, not homework. I just hate the word homework. I mean, one thing that I am trying to get people out of is get the mindset out of academia land, because soon you're not going to be in school. I mean, we're going to educate and learn all the time, but the word homework is just, it's just too school-like. But one of the things about cybersecurity is hands-on skills are critical. But also, you have to work hard. And you always have to keep learning and keep up. So there is a very conscious reason why I chose the word labs and not homework. I mean, if you like, even if, let's say if you're not a student, even if you're a practitioner, even if you're a professional, junior, you know, mid-level to even senior, I mean, labs are always part of learning. Like, I just hate the word homework. It's just like, and also homework has a connotation of one-offs. One warning I want to give to everyone that's on the session right now is, unlike most other classes in academics, you will need the skills that you learn in each and every lab. They build on top of each other. So for example, the commands that you use, in lab number 1. Strings, curl, wget, especially file, especially SSH. You'll see throughout the whole course. So labs are not one-offs. Like, it's not forget it and do it and then forget about them. Like, there will be time. Do you remember this in lab number X, Y, and Z? Okay. So I absolutely, also, even for me, like, if you're actually curious, like, I have a home lab. I mean, that's a laboratory where I can just dabble and learn and all the different tools. I just really hate the word homework. And so one of the things about, well, I think a lot of you folks know, if you know me well, like, you gotta start to think a lot further than just academic and school, because it's not, you're gonna probably be all leaving school soon. And education, however, is lifelong. So you're not gonna see the word homework at like a day job. Okay. So, what was that command to show the menu? I think to show the menu for a command. Man. Yep. Very important. One last comment before I go. You will not. There's no way in hell you will master the command line and command line tool in one day, in one sitting. No way. I mean, for me, it took me a good 10 years to be really, really good with the command line. Please do so. Okay? Extremely, again, I repeat, like, you won't get to be, you can't be good at the command line or anything of that matter in one sitting. It took me good 10 years to be really, really good at the command line. Just a warning. Just to let you know. Okay? So with that said, let me just get out of here. I can exit. Oh, exit is another command. I'm going to log out. All right. I don't need this anymore. I can log out of here. And I'm going to stop the stream now, and I'll see you all next week. Bye, everyone.